Since 1739, archaeologists have been digging up small, hollow, 12-sided bronze objects across the old northern edges of the Roman Empire, and in nearly 300 years, nobody has ever definitively figured out what they were for. No Roman author ever wrote about them. No Roman painting or mosaic ever depicts one being used. They just show up, buried in graves, tucked into coin hoards, and sitting quietly in pits more than 130 times now, always in the same general region and never once accompanied by an explanation. Recently, a wave of videos has started claiming Grok AI finally cracked the case wide open. Before you get too excited, let's talk about what's actually true here, because the real mystery is honestly stranger than most of these clickbait answers. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll know more about this object than most of the people making videos about it. And if unsolved historical mysteries are your thing, subscribe now. First, the basics, because this object is genuinely strange even before you get into the theories. A Roman dodecahedron is a small, hollow, geometric shape made from a copper alloy, typically somewhere between the size of a golf ball and a baseball. It has 12 flat pentagonal faces, meeting at 20 corners, and each of those corners is topped with a small round knob. Every one of the 12 faces has a circular hole cut into it, and here's the detail that trips up almost every simple explanation. Those holes aren't a uniform size. They vary from face to face on the exact same object, in a pattern that doesn't repeat consistently across different dodecahedrons either. Some examples analyzed for their metal composition, like the one found in Norton Disney, Lincolnshire in 2023, turn out to be roughly 75% copper, 7% tin, and 18% lead, a deliberate, carefully balanced alloy, not something thrown together carelessly. At least 120 to 130 of these objects have now been recovered, and every single confirmed find comes from the northwestern provinces of the Roman Empire, mainly what's now France, Germany, Britain, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Here's the detail that throws off almost every visitor encountering this mystery for the first time. Not one has ever been found in Rome itself, or anywhere in Italy, or anywhere around the Mediterranean core of the empire. For an object apparently significant enough to be crafted with real skill and buried with real intention, that's a genuinely strange distribution pattern, concentrated entirely in one regional corner of a massive empire. Classical archaeologist Michael Guggenberger, who has published detailed studies on these objects, has documented that all confirmed examples date to a specific window, roughly the late 2nd century through the late 4th century AD. They've been recovered from a wide range of contexts too, buried in the graves of both men and women, discovered inside hoards of coins, and even turning up in what appear to be simple refuse heaps, which means there's no single clean category of person or ritual that ties every known example together. So what are the actual leading theories? The ones real archaeologists have seriously proposed over the decades, rather than manufactured for a video title. There are quite a few, and it's worth going through the strongest ones, honestly. The measuring device theory suggested these were used by Roman surveyors or engineers, possibly to calculate distances, angles, or even the range for artillery, using the different sized holes to sight along specific measurements. It's a compelling idea on paper, but it falls apart once you look closely at the physical evidence. The objects vary significantly in size and hole diameter from one example to another, with no standardized measurement system connecting them, which is exactly the opposite of what you'd expect from a tool meant for precise engineering or military calculations across the empire. Neither, since plenty of examples have holes too large, too small, or too awkwardly positioned to reasonably support a candle. And if this were simply everyday household lighting equipment, you'd expect far more of them scattered far more widely across the empire, not concentrated in one specific region. The knitting tool theory is one of the more surprisingly popular modern explanations, proposing that the object was used as a gauge or aid for a technique called Viking knitting, essentially creating woven metal chains or gloves by looping wire around the knobs and through the holes. Enthusiasts have actually recreated this process successfully using replica dodecahedrons, which is a genuinely fun demonstration, though it doesn't explain why an object supposedly meant for practical, repeated craft work shows no signs of wear on the vast majority of surviving examples. That absence of wear is actually one of the most important clues in this entire mystery, and it's worth sitting with for a second. Multiple research groups, including the team behind the 2023 Norton Disney find, have specifically noted that most examples show no scratching, no polished patterns, no evidence of regular handling consistent with tool use. Combine that with the fact that these objects were clearly expensive and time-consuming to produce, cast in a difficult, sticky leaden alloy that required real skill to mold successfully, and you're left with an object that looks like it mattered enormously, but apparently wasn't used the way a tool gets used. Which brings us to the theory that currently holds the most support among researchers actively working on this puzzle: a religious or ritual function. Researchers at Belgium's Gallo-Roman Museum have proposed that dodecahedrons may have been used in magical or spiritual rituals specific to Gallo-Roman or Celtic religious practice in the empire's northwestern provinces, a theory that would actually help explain why these objects are completely absent from official Roman literature and art. As the later, increasingly Christianized Roman Empire moved toward outlawing magic and non-sanctioned ritual practices, an object tied to that kind of spiritual tradition would have had every reason to disappear from formal written and artistic records, even while continuing to be crafted, used, and eventually buried by local communities who valued it deeply enough to place it in graves alongside their dead. Now, about that AI angle. Here's the honest picture. There's no verified, peer-reviewed announcement of Grok or any AI system definitively solving this mystery. What's actually happening is the same pattern we've seen with other ancient artifact mysteries recently. People prompting AI chatbots to analyze the known evidence and summarize the leading theories, sometimes phrased dramatically enough to sound like a brand new discovery. When you actually run this question through a modern AI model, what typically comes back is a well-organized synthesis of exactly the theories real archaeologists have been debating for decades, generally landing, like most current experts do, on the ritual or religious use theory as the most evidentially supported explanation, while being upfront that no theory has been definitively proven. That's genuinely useful as a fast way to catch up on decades of scattered archaeological literature. It's just not a shocking new revelation nobody previously considered. What is genuinely new and worth paying attention to is the ongoing physical archaeology. The Norton Disney History and Archaeology Group, the volunteer team behind the 2023 Lincolnshire discovery, has publicly stated they plan to resume excavations at the site, specifically hoping to find additional dodecahedrons or related artifacts nearby that could finally provide the missing context this mystery has lacked for nearly 3 centuries. That's the real frontier here. Not a chatbot output, but actual archaeologists going back into the dirt with modern excavation techniques, hoping the next find finally comes with enough surrounding context, a workshop, an inscription, a clear ritual site, to settle a debate that's outlasted the empire that produced these objects by more than 1,000 years. So where does that leave us? Nearly 300 years after the first one turned up, and more than 130 examples later, we still don't have a confirmed answer. We have strong circumstantial evidence pointing toward ritual or religious significance specific to a particular corner of the Roman world. We have real physical clues, wax residue, alloy composition, burial context, that rule out several tempting but ultimately unsupported theories. And we have a growing pile of archaeological data that keeps adding detail without ever quite delivering a final verdict. Maybe that's honestly the most interesting part of this whole mystery. A civilization that left behind detailed written records about aqueducts, wars, tax codes, and volcanic eruptions somehow left absolutely nothing explaining an object its own people clearly valued enough to craft with real skill and bury with real intention, over and over for 2 centuries straight. Whatever the dodecahedron actually meant to the people who made it, they took that knowledge with them, and no chatbot, however advanced, can retrieve information that was simply never written down in the first place. So here's the question worth sitting with. If a society as thoroughly documented as Rome could still leave behind a mystery this deep, hiding in plain sight in museum collections for centuries, what does that tell you about how much we're actually missing from history, even from civilizations we think we understand completely? Drop your best theory in the comments, and if you want more of these deep dives into objects history forgot to explain, subscribe now, because there's plenty more waiting to be uncovered.